What's going on YouTube? I'm back with another video, and today we're going to be doing a video about Michael Jackson, the greatest entertainer of all time. I don't give a fuck about Drake. I don't give a fuck how many hits he got. He's nowhere near Michael Jackson skill level, musicality, discog. There's nothing about Drake that's any near level Michael Jackson level. So Michael Jackson is the greatest of all time. But this video is about, did fame destroy Michael Jackson? And we're going to be reacting to this video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I'm Isaiah Sanders, and we're going to jump straight into it.
Michael Jackson spent his entire life chasing perfection. The biggest performances, the biggest records, and the biggest audience in the world. And eventually, he achieved something almost no one else in history ever has. Global superstardom on a level so massive it barely even feels human anymore.
That's right.
But here's the question people still argue about decades later. Did that same fame eventually destroy him? Because the more successful Michael became, the more isolated he seemed. The more famous he became, the stranger the public viewed him. And by the end of his life, it often felt like the world no longer saw Michael Jackson as a person at all, only as a celebrity, a caricature, a spectacle, or a controversy.
In my opinion, I believe fame destroyed Michael Jackson. There's controversy around Michael Jackson, but in general, like he said, as Michael Jackson got more popular, he didn't even. It came to a point he wasn't even human no more. I know you say I'm blazing, but no, real shit. Michael Jackson was so fucking famous, he wasn't even a human being no more. He was a phenomenon. He was an idea. He was an image. He wasn't no more human. Michael Jackson was destroyed by fame, and I believe this is why he died, and this is why his life went downhill, because of fame.
So maybe the real tragedy of Michael's life is that he achieved a level of fame no human being was ever truly meant to survive. Most celebrities experience fame at some point in their lives, but Michael's relationship with fame was completely different. Because Michael didn't become famous as an adult, he became famous as a child. Before he fully understood privacy, identity, trust, or normal life itself. From the beginning, fame wasn't something Michael entered, it was the environment he grew up inside. And over time, that environment may have fundamentally changed how he saw the world, how the world saw him, and how he even saw himself. Before Michael was the king of pop, he was a child working in one of the most demanding entertainment environments imaginable. The Jackson 5 weren't just talented kids making music, they were a business, a machine, a non-stop performance schedule built around perfection and discipline.
We have to think about it like this, right? Michael Jackson been singing since he was 4 years old, 6 years old. And ever since he was freaking 9, 10, he's been a star, right? This is Michael Jackson probably at 12 years old right here with his brothers. At 9 years old, he came out with his brother Jackson 5, and they had the song I Want You Back. By then, he was a star. He was a star. Once he dropped Thriller, he became a global phenomenon. So when the YouTuber in this video said he was born into fame, it's to a point that his whole life is being famous. For example, Jackie, once the Jackson 5 became famous, Jackie was already a teenager, right? So at least Jackie grew up to be a regular child. Jermaine got to be a child. Marlon was like 2 years older than Michael. He probably, had the same issues as Michael, but Michael was the star, right? Marlon is like 2 years older than Michael. But in general, Michael was born into a phenomenon. He was born into fame, so he never had a chance to have a childhood. So some of his weird behavior that he implicated as he got older was because of this situation.
And Michael quickly became the center of it all. Imagine being globally recognized, constantly performing, endlessly scrutinized, and financially responsible for your whole family. before you're even old enough to fully understand adulthood. That kind of pressure changes people, especially when childhood itself starts disappearing. One of the most common themes throughout Michael's life was his obsession with reclaiming childhood.
Yeah.
And honestly, that obsession makes a lot more sense when you realize how early fame may have taken that experience away from him. Then came the 1980s, and this is where Michael stopped being merely famous and became something much larger. Thriller changed everything, not just for Michael, but for pop culture itself. At that point, Michael simply wasn't an artist anymore. He became a global event, a symbol, and a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And with that level of fame came something dangerous: the loss of normal human interaction. Because how do you trust people when everybody wants something from you, every move becomes news, and millions of people project expectations onto you constantly?
We have to remember that when Michael Jackson dropped Thriller, he was no longer like. Let me put it in perspective. Before Thriller, before Off the Wall, Michael was famous, but he wasn't like a phenomena, right? I did my research. When Michael was with Motown, they knew he was a child prodigy. But once he dropped Thriller, there's no way he's a regular human being no more. Yes, he was famous before Thriller, but once Thriller dropped, there was no going back. He became so famous that everybody around him can use him to take advantage of him, even his family, or to blackmail him. When you become the famous that Michael Jackson became during Thriller, that's not regular fame. That's not just your TikTok fame. Like, Michael Jackson was so famous that when he went outside, he had to disguise himself. He had to put fake noses on, fake mask, just to go watch a movie, because people will fucking faint. Right? This is a global phenomenon. Once you become this famous, you can't behave like a normal human being. And because of this affected his relationships. And this is also why I believe his relationship with children was so intimate, because he didn't have a childhood. But not only that, him being so famous, that's how he got took advantage of, in my opinion.
Over time, fame can start turning real life into performance. And for Michael, it often felt like there was no separation anymore between the person and the image. One of the saddest things about Michael Jackson's fame is how the media gradually stopped treating him like a human being. Instead, he became a character, a headline, and a spectacle. The tabloids didn't just report on Michael, they built an entire mythology around him. From the nicknames to the rumors, stories about his appearance, behavior, personal life, and eccentricities became constant entertainment for the public. And the problem is, once the world starts viewing someone as a spectacle instead of a person, empathy begins disappearing.
That's true.
People stop asking, how does this affect him emotionally? And start asking, what strange thing will happen next? That shift may have been one of the most psychologically damaging parts of Michael's fame. And as Michael became more famous, he also seemed to become more isolated.
Yep.
And honestly, that isolation makes sense.
And the reason why Michael isolated from everybody, because there has never been nobody as famous as Michael Jackson. There has never been a musician as famous as Michael Jackson, ever. Like, ever. Right? You had the Beatles. The Beatles were very famous, but Michael Jackson was on another level. Elvis was very famous, but Michael Jackson was a phenomenon, right? Cultural icon, but on a super, super duper next level, right? So, if you're one of a kind of anything, you isolate yourself, right? Him being one of a kind, this fake, super, super, super duper famous guy, he isolated himself. Isolation trickled down to abuse. A lot of people that get abused, if you really do your research, they were isolated, right? And I think Michael became isolated, and that trickled down to a lot of problems that he had in his life. because people either try to take advantage of him, abuse him, or basically try to destroy his image because he was so isolated, right? And this is understandable because of how famous he was.
Because extreme fame creates paranoia, especially when privacy disappears, trust becomes difficult, and every relationship is questioned. Who genuinely cares about you? Who wants access? Who wants money? Who wants proximity to fame? For somebody living at Michael's level of celebrity, those questions probably became impossible to escape. And eventually, Neverland itself started to feel symbolic of that isolation. Not just a home, but almost a retreat from reality itself. A place separated from the outside world. And the more Michael withdrew into that world, the more disconnected he appeared from ordinary life. And this is where fame stopped looking glamorous altogether. From the allegations, to the investigations, to the non-stop media coverage. At that point, Michael was no longer just the most famous entertainer in the world, he became one of the most controversial. And once controversy becomes attached to someone at that level of fame, every part of their identity starts changing publicly. For many people, the music was no longer the first thing they thought about anymore. The conversation shifted completely. And this may be the point where fame became truly destructive. Because
And I want to say something. I want to address the elephant in the room, right? Michael Jackson, right? It is very controversial for a grown man to have sleepovers with children. I'm just gonna say it. I don't give a fuck how you feel. I'm gonna be honest. For Michael Jackson as a grown man to be having sleepover with children was not acceptable, not appropriate. But I think he had those obscure, weird relationships with children because of his lack of childhood. That doesn't mean it's okay to have sleepover with children in this just insurmountable closeness with children. It's not appropriate. It was never appropriate for Michael Jackson as a 35-year-old, 30-year-old, 25-year-old man to have sleepovers with little boys. That's never acceptable. But I will say, I believe this is an implication of him not having a childhood. But that does not excuse a grown man having sleepovers with boys. I'm not saying he's guilty or not. I'm just saying having sleepovers with little boy as a 35-year-old, 25-year-old man is not normal. We have to call a spade a spade. It is not normal for a grown man to have sleepovers with little boys. No, in no context. Kids should not be in your bedroom, sleeping in your bed. You in the bed with them. That's not normal. But I will say this is an implication of him not having a childhood. I will say that.
Because Michael wasn't just dealing with private struggles anymore, he was experiencing them under global observation. One of the darkest aspects of Michael Jackson's fame is that there may have been no way for him to ever escape his public image. No matter what he did, people analyzed it, mocked it, debated it, or turned it into headlines. Even his appearance became a worldwide fixation.
Right.
And eventually, it seemed like Michael became trapped between who he really was and who the world believed he was. That's an incredibly difficult way to live, especially for decades. People often talk about fame like it's the ultimate dream, but Michael Jackson's life raises a very uncomfortable possibility. What if there's a level of fame that becomes psychologically unsustainable? What if becoming one of the most recognizable people on Earth eventually costs you privacy, stability, your own identity, and normal human connection? Because by the end of Michael's life, it often felt like he was carrying the weight of global attention almost constantly, and no human being is really designed for that. I think part of why Michael Jackson's story continues affecting people emotionally is because underneath all the controversy and spectacle, there's still something deeply tragic about it. People see his unbelievable talent, the impossible pressure, the isolation, and someone who may never have experienced a truly normal life. And whether people defend Michael, criticize him, or remain conflicted about him, there's still a sense that fame fundamentally changed him in ways that nobody fully understands.
Agree.
So did fame destroy Michael Jackson? Maybe not all at once. Maybe it happened slowly. Over decades of pressure, scrutiny, isolation, performance, and living under a level of attention few humans could survive comfortably. Because the tragedy of Michael Jackson may not simply be that he became famous, it may be that he became too famous. Right. Do you think fame ultimately destroyed Michael Jackson?
In my opinion, I think fame did destroy him, but also I personally believe that Michael Jackson was around a lot of yes men. Right? I do believe Michael Jackson was taken advantage of. I do believe he was abused. And but I also have to take into the fact that just because you were abused or you were hurt, that does not mean you can just do anything. And certain behaviors are allowed because of that. I do think Michael Jackson needed help mentally, psychologically. Like I said, I believe the courts say that Michael Jackson is innocent, but I will say that his behavior was strange with little children. I just have to say that. Michael Jackson is the greatest entertainer in the world. I have to give him that. My favorite music act is the Beatles. I believe Beatles had the best music ever, but I believe Michael Jackson is the greatest entertainer that ever lived. My name is Isaiah. Thank you for watching.